We're back now, and we have breaking news. The Justice Department warned the Trump administration last month that Michael Flynn misled them about his communications with the Russian ambassador and was potentially vulnerable to blackmail by the Russians. That's according to a source familiar with this matter. A White House official also confirmed the Justice Department warning. Back with me now, Michelle Kaczynski, Mark Preston, Nia Malika Henderson, and David Gergen. This is a very interesting bit of news that we have coming out. Now, Mark, I want to get back to you with this conversation. If the Flynn situation is fluid, as the White House is saying, after this latest reporting about the White House being warned weeks ago that Flynn was vulnerable to blackmail, is it even more fluid now?
Look, no doubt, because it's now been exposed that, in fact, that they've known it for several weeks and that it could be. But, you know, we talk about him being susceptible to possible blackmail. But what did he do that the Russians have on him? We haven't actually explored, you know, that avenue, if anything. And it would be quite interesting to know what the Justice Department thinks or the FBI thinks could be used against Michael Flynn. And you know, Don, there's been a lot of talk about loyalty here, about how Donald Trump is very loyal to his people. And that is true. There's no question about it. And you could sense that he probably has strong loyalty to General Flynn. However, there is another bit of loyalty that he owes, and that's to his vice president, somebody who went out there and defended Flynn on national television, somebody who has really done a great job of defending him and standing by his side. And at some point, I think Donald Trump has to wonder, where does his loyalty really lie if it does come to that? Does it lie with Mike Pence, or does it lie with Mike Flynn?
David, what does the president need to do to show leadership in this situation? He was elected to be a manager and to only have the best people around him. And again, the person who is second to him is the vice president. And if they're putting him out there, you know, with bad information, shouldn't he be a leader in this situation? What should he do?
Yeah, let's go back to this loyalty point that Mark just raised. The President of the United States' first loyalty is to the country, is to the people of the country. Right. And we now have a mess on our hands that is very, very curious, that the White House has known for a month. Now, what happened to that report when it came in? It came into the General Counsel at the White House when Ms. Yates went over there and talked to the General Counsel. That report must have gone to the President almost instantaneously. It's impossible to believe that the White House staff would sit on that report and not tell the President. And if that's the case, why didn't the Vice President know at that time what had come in? I don't understand that. There's something here that just doesn't add up about what happened internally. Now, I think that the President has to act quickly, Don. I do wonder, and maybe Mark or someone else can address this, as long as Pence stays in the White House and Congress wants to hold investigations, he can invoke executive privilege and not testify. If he leaves, is he vulnerable to testifying, and is that an outcome the White House would like to avoid? That may be part of the considerations that are underway now.
Wait, say that again. Testifying to who, where?
Well, the Congress, there are a number of people, including John McCain and Lindsey Graham and others, who have been quite curious about the Russian relationship for a while, and they want to have hearings to get to the bottom of it. So let's say the person who really knows what went on in that conversation, because he had the conversation, was Mike Flynn. So the Congress says, okay, Mike Flynn, come up here and testify. And Mike Flynn said, no, I don't have to testify. I'm on the White House staff, and the President's going to invoke executive privilege, which means I don't have to say anything to you. You know, I don't have to disclose anything about the President. Does he lose that executive privilege if he were to be fired? And does that make him vulnerable to testify? That may be something the White House is considering. There may be somebody else here who can say more definitively about what happens once you leave the White House on executive privilege. But I can tell you that must be part of the conversations that are going on, because, Don, they have clearly been trying to sit on this story for a month.
For a month, right.
For a month. They've known this for a month. We just learned tonight. They've known for a month. And they've
Michelle,
clearly
you've been a White House correspondent for a while now, and do you know the answer to David's question about privilege?
No, but it would seem that, I mean, things that you dealt with while you were in that position would probably still be protected afterwards. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you couldn't ask questions around that, but I think that's, you know, that's getting into some legal intricacies.
But he wasn't
it's best probably answered by...
He wasn't in the government when he had the conversation.
That's
it's probably
true.
best
That's
answered
true.
by,
It
by
happened
some
be-
attorneys.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this, because you're saying they've known this for a while. And I'm reading here, this is from Nia from the Washington Post reporting. They're saying that, that analysts, that they were concerned about it. Because the thing that sort of raised concern for them was when Vladimir Putin did not retaliate for the Obama sanctions, and they wondered why. And then they realized that phone calls like that are monitored, often by the government. So they went back to this ambassador's calls and then picked up the conversation, according to the Washington Post, with General Flynn, the discussions there. And then it says Yates, then the attorney, who we're talking about, Sally Yates, who was fired by Donald Trump, by the president, after the travel ban. Yates, the deputy attorney general, then considered Flynn's comments in the intercepted call to be highly significant and potentially illegal. That's according to an official familiar with her thinking. Yates and other intelligence officials suspected that Flynn could be in violation of an obscure U.S. statute known as the Logan Act, which bars U.S. citizens from interfering in diplomatic disputes with another country. And so there are recordings of these phone calls potentially. How damaging can that be?
Incredibly damaging, and certainly damaging that the White House seems to have known about this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's unclear what their strategy is. I mean, David might be giving them too much credit to suggest that they're thinking about whether or not Flynn can testify in any sorts of hearings on the Senate. I mean, it almost seems like they want Flynn to resign gracefully, and you know, as the result of sort of 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 words from the Washington Post. All of these revelations are very embarrassing for him. I mean, he's been exposed as someone who hasn't been entirely truthful. So, I mean, I think a lot of questions. And then the question, I think, also of what Trump knew and when he knew it. I talked to someone who's slightly knows Flynn, and his suggestion is that this was probably like a Flynn freelancing operation, that this is something that he undertook on his own. Maybe that's hard to believe, but in some ways Flynn does have a bit of a checkered past, certainly at the DIA, and was forced out of that role there. But I mean, this White House, again, one of the things I think that in some ways has shielded him from getting pushed out is the chaos in the White House. It's almost like to push him out would in some ways too much acknowledge the chaos. But you also wonder that why don't they just end this now again? I mean, this has been
Well,
going
I think
on
the
since
question
Friday.
is probably saving face. How much can they stick by this and try to save face for someone who was a controversial pick by many to begin with? Or do they just say, okay, enough is enough, and then they move on? So we'll continue to discuss this. Stand by, everyone. When we come right back, more in our breaking news coverage. The White House warned last month about Michael Flynn's contacts with the Russian ambassador and his potential vulnerability to blackmail. We'll be right back.